trying to produce consistent income from a growth-focused portfolio is like trying to peel that banana.
Right. And it's not some speculative, abstract, like, idea that's like, well, this is what should happen or this is what could happen. It's like, no, like, if this is what we do, this is to the penny how it's going to affect.
How much of that is it going to solve for, and what's left over? That has to come from your investments. That has to be looked at.
All right, so welcome back to the Legacy Life Podcast. We are back here today. We're going to be talking a little bit more about this income idea that we were talking about last week, but kind of flip it upside down, if you will. And so we talked about, what the common, if you remember last week, what the common thing is that you'll see when you find you're going to do any sort of retirement or income planning is the risk questionnaire or whatever, right? And it's like, all right, are you conservative, moderate, or aggressive with your risk? You know?
Right.
And we kind of talked about how that makes really no sense. Like, why would you ask that question? How does that really help this person? Because you're just giving them a arbitrary baseline number, and you don't really know their full situation and what's going on.
And you're necessarily looking at the problem.
Not necessarily looking at the problem, and really just focusing on growth and not necessarily income.
Right.
Which, when it comes to retirement planning, income is actually what you're planning for, not growth per se, right?
Not first and foremost.
Not
anyway.
first and foremost anyway, right?
Yeah.
And so if you want to kind of get us started and talk about, okay, what then are we going to do then?
Right. Well, I talked a little bit about this, but a friend of mine used to always use the analogy of the banana. I found it very appealing. Anyway, I was just holding for applause.
Yeah,
I'll be here all week, folks. Sorry.
Not going to get any here.
Right. But that, most of us open the banana the same way. Stem, you pull back, do the peeling. And that doesn't always work. I mean, I have many times found that you do that, and sometimes it splits wrong, or you mash the bottom when you're holding and trying to do it. Sometimes it doesn't work very well. But if you study monkeys who actually do eat them, they actually open it from the bottom side.
Yeah.
And it's actually easier, and it works every time. And so the analogy was, though, is that if monkeys peel a banana from the opposite end, because the stem is the toughest part at the top, so they instinctively pinch the bottom, right? And the weaker part, they peel it open with ease, okay? So the real question is like, if monkeys have figured this out, why are we still struggling with opening bananas, okay? That's kind of the idea. And so he was equating it to saying the answer is because of conditioning and habit. Yeah. That's just what we do. It's what we subconsciously have seen done, so that's what we do. And it's the way that looks like it should be done, right? And so that brings us then to the retirement and income planning, is that most have been taught to invest for growth, and it sounds smart and it sounds right. But the twist is that growth and income are not the same thing.
Bigger is better, right?
Right. Well, everyone's doing it this way, right? Wall Street wants you to believe that if you just grow your portfolio big enough, then you'll be fine.
Right.
Right. And so we're just doing things by condition and by habit and what we've been told. But the truth of the matter is if this pattern is so correct and is so right and works so much, then why is there still so much anxiety in people when they're planning?
Right.
Right? Why does all that stress and anxiety still exist if this is the correct way to do it?
Because a lot of it's speculative.
Right.
And it's not hard guaranteed numbers. Like, it's not like this is what's actually going to happen. It's like, well, if you get this rate of return, then this is what it's going to look like. And we talked about it some last week, how if you don't get that rate of return, all of your numbers change. Because then you have to sell shares, and then your amount goes down, and then it's like, okay, is that my number still? And it's like, no, right? And so it's stressful.
And it can be stressful, a constant reevaluation. And so we just at the outset, again, want to reiterate that retirement is not about accumulating money. It's about using it.
Right.
Right.
It's about all these years working to build up
Right.
whatever it is, your 401k.
Which is the accumulation phase, right?
Right, exactly, right? And so growth makes sense in that instance, but instead of, you say it all the time, instead of growth on your cash, retirement's about return on your cash.
Return of cash, yeah, exactly. And it's about turning the life savings into a reliable income, because you're going to have your Social Security income. Some people might have a pension. Some people might own maybe some rental properties that are providing some income. But is that all the income you need? And if not, no, you've saved this money. It also has to be turned into reliable paychecks as well. So trying to produce consistent income from a growth-focused portfolio is like trying to peel that banana from the stem, okay? From the wrong end. It looks logical, but it's what everybody does. But it doesn't always work easily, and most often, like you said, ends in frustration or a constant reevaluation or stress. Because one year it worked maybe okay, and the next year, ooh, now I mashed the banana. Now what do we do? This looks really bruised, right? And so at Legacy Life, we use a system called Simplicitry, and we kind of try to churn the planning. Some people might say up on its head, but that's not necessarily what we're trying to do. It just might look like that's what we're doing because it doesn't look like everybody else.
Right. Because instead of people coming and saying, hey, like, I want to do a plan or whatever, and then we make a plan for them and then offer solution before we figure out the issue,
The problem?
we're more so diagnosing what their problem is.
Correct. You got to diagnose the money first, right? So our system's called Simplicitry, right? So we focus on income, not assumptions. Okay. And so, how it works, like you were just saying, we have to start with the situation. I think instead of people coming to a firm and letting us show you what we do, we need to first find out what the problem is. I mean, if you went to a doctor, do you want them walking in the first 5 minutes showing you, look, here's all the medications I can prescribe? Right. Probably not. You probably want him first to listen to your heart and take your blood and diagnose and say, is there anything wrong? Am I okay? Does my blood pressure look good? Is my cholesterol too high? Like you want to find out what's going on and then have the expert kind of say, let me help you with, here's the 3 things I found and here's the best way to solve it. So why don't we do that in financial planning? A lot of times people aren't even looking at the problem. Like we said last week, oh, you're a conservative investor? Well, then here's your assumed rate we have to get every year.
Right. And here's the portfolio that we have that will do that for you.
Exactly.
Right.
And but what's the problem? Nobody knows.
Right.
Right. So we first have to assess the current situation and diagnose, and we call that the shortfall.
Yep.
You have some income coming in through your Social Security and pensions maybe, or rental income, whatever, and how much of your total income that you need, what lifestyle do you need to live on, how much of that is it going to solve for, and what's left over? That has to come from your investments. That has to be looked at. And how's that going to be done? And then, whether we do that for the client or they want to find, once they know the problem, if they want to solve it for themselves, how many people they'll go on and they do their own assessment for how to take care of their health.
Yep.
There's a lot of people on health journeys. And there's a lot of information out there. And sometimes it's modern medicine helps them. Sometimes they find, the diet plan that's helping reverse things. So you can do it yourself.
Right.
DIY, right? Or DIY,
DIY.
DIY, right? Or you can hire someone like us, or you can find other people. But you've got to know what the problem is first that needs to be solved and taken care of. And if people want us to help them with that, then the next thing we can do is now you can look at, well, what is available out there? And how do each of those in turn affect the issue? Does it actually help solve the problem?
Right. And you can see it in real time, actually, how it affects the plan.
In real time, exactly. And so I think it's really important that clients are able to see investments or strategies, not just the ones that do work well. I think it's just as important for them to see the ones that don't work, and to educate them as to why it doesn't work as well as this one. Right. So it's really an educational process where they get to learn why certain investments work better than others for their situation.
Right. And it's not some speculative abstract like idea that's like, well, this is what should happen or this is what could happen. It's
Right.
like, no, like if this is what we do, this is to the penny how it's going to affect your
Exactly.
income in retirement.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so what would the result of that be for most people if they had that kind of a process? That clarity, as we've seen time and time again, brings a lot of peace of mind, because maybe for the first time the client actually understands where the income's going to come from, right? And how it's going to take care of their retirement. Our new clients down south, right? That family, husband, wife, retired military family. I think they're a great example. Took a couple meetings and educated them, and they were able to see the different investments, where they're at, how implementing this strategy is going to help them take care of the rest. And they understood it so well that
And you can notice as soon as they did too, because their like eyes lit up and they were all of a sudden like kind of giddy and excited about it and
right.
everything. And they're like, I gotta tell everyone and my mother about this.
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
They're like, yeah. So how do the referrals contact you? Do you want them to call this way or
Right.
It's like it was like they came alive.
Mm-hmm.
And they understood it, and they're like, well, can we add more to this later so it can do X, Y, and Z? And we could actually show them, because once they got the concept,
Right.
they can now, I think,
make decisions in confidence.
right.
Yeah.
And they're empowered to actually participate in their retirement strategy. It's not just like, I hope it works and please tell me everything's going to be okay. Right. They actually were very excited, and because they, I think, for the first time understood what exactly was going to happen and why.
Yeah.
So that is great. So we don't deal in abstract theory, right? It's about turning people's fear and uncertainty where they can have great faith in what's going to happen moving forward.
Yeah.
And that's really satisfying. I know for me.
Oh,
I
yeah.
know for you too.
100%.
Yeah. So Wall Street assumes a rate of return. Simplicitry actually solves for one. I think that's an important distinction.
Right.
That instead of an assumed rate of return, our program doesn't allow us to put any assumed rates in it.
Right.
It actually backs in and solves for the exact rate it's necessary. And to your point too, the difference between that is, if you ask most people today, where does your income plan, where does the income come from in your investments? They don't know.
Right.
They have a collection of investments, which I heard one of our advisors say, it's like having I think it was Charlie, said, it's like having a pile of car parts, but no car, and just trusting that it's going to get you safely across the country.
It's true, yeah.
Right? It's not assembled. It's just it's eclectic, it's
Right.
kind of a gathering of all these different things, but no really understanding of how the income is going to be generated. Right? So,
which we've had conversations with a few people that are like that are like, yeah, I'm in this investment, and I'm looking at this alternative investment over here, and like they're just like almost like addicted to just investing their money in as many places as possible.
right. And so, how much income is that going to generate? They never know.
Exactly.
They never can answer that question. They don't know.
And they have a hard time keeping track of it all.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's another great point. I didn't even think about that, but yeah, keeping track of all that.
Mm-hmm.
What was I going to say based on that? They didn't have confidence in knowing where the income's going to come from, and so I forget what I was going to say.
We were talking about the rates, how we back into them, and instead of assuming them,
right?
AKA the retirement preservation legacy rate.
Well, there's this really great point I was going to make, and it was really awesome. It was going to tie it in. It was going to really be helpful for people. So, yeah, cool.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it's gone.
Figure it out for yourselves.
Right. Exactly. So in Simplicitry, though, we can back in and really show people, the retirement rate. They need a preservation rate if they want to preserve assets, or a legacy rate if they have a certain amount they want to make sure they're handing on to another generation. It really helps. We can calculate, look at any of those scenarios, and it's really that simple.
Yep. And our goal is to get that rate to 0 so that they don't need a rate of return to actually reach their goal.
Right. Yeah. I mean, how would I feel if if I'm in a growth mindset and I have to get 7.2% every year?
Right. That's stressful.
It can be every year. I mean, do I think that's going to happen every year? Probably not. And so if I have a really bad year, now that retirement's longer, you know, you're planning for 20, 30 years now for people. It's a long time, you know. Um, and so, you know, those are definitely important questions. You know, if you had to think, oh my gosh, I got a 7.2% a year, that could be high stress. But if you can get that rate as close to zero, needing zero as possible, needing zero, not means doesn't mean you earn zero.
Right. But it's like if it never earned anything, worst case scenario, you'd be fine.
And you'd be fine. Would that bring less stress or more stress? Probably less, right?
Right.
So if that's possible, would someone want to see a solution like that? Probably. Most likely, me.
I would.
Yeah. So, you know, if you can't explain in your own investments where the income's coming from, don't panic. Okay? It is a problem, but it's also an opportunity. Okay? So you want to get yourself into an educational process where you can be a part. We say this all the time, but you want to be a part of the planning process. You know, if you can avoid being in a situation where it's like, here's my information, I'll come back in a week and you show me the plan you put together.
Right.
That, you know, that's one way. Or you can be in a meeting where the plan's being put together with you in real time and you're watching and being educated on how it's going to work so you can feel empowered. That, I think, makes all the difference.
Right. Because then you actually understand it. You can ask questions in the moment.
Yep.
And you can actually see all of your investments and things and income streams like being put in and how they're all working together in real time. Right.
Yep.
And so, you know, like with confidence, like we're not making anything up. You're watching us do it all right here, you know?
Exactly.
Right. And we're seeing it for the first time with you too.
Exactly.
So it's like we're really just trying to diagnose what's going on.
Exactly. And so, you know, when clients, that's the point when the clients use this tool with us, they, you know, something amazing happens. They realize they don't have to chase high returns anymore. They don't need to hope the market performs. And they can plan based on what they already have rather than feeling like, oh, I didn't hit the magic number. I still have to save more, work longer. Maybe not necessarily, right? So instead of having a shortfall, imagine being able to turn that income into maybe a surplus too instead. How many times have we seen people not only be able to meet their income goal, but produce more income than they need, right? So you replace it with an overflow, we call it, or a surplus. That's peace of mind. And so that's, you know, really what we're offering, you know, the general public in terms of a process, making no assumptions about what solutions are going to work best for you, but to first diagnose and find out what the problem is.
Nor are we saying that we could actually help everyone.
Right.
Right. But like our hope is that we can at least like educate people on what their situation is and at least like get them put back on course, like where they need to go.
Yep. And the other thing too, I think it kind of go to the other end too. There's a lot of people who come to us who maybe are making pretty decent money in their career now. And when you talk to them, well, you know, well, how much you're looking to make in retirement per year, you know, how many people assume a much lower amount of income, not because they want it to be lower, but because they don't feel like they have enough. So they're like, well, maybe they're making $120,000 a year now. And they're like, well, retirement, well, we're thinking, you know, we're probably going to be able to do 60. Right? Okay. And we put that number in there and then watch their eyes turn when you actually find out not only can they maintain their current income, but sometimes even elevate it. And they're like, well, we can live on how much? Right? That is so satisfying.
Right, it is. Yeah.
Because it wasn't lower amount because they were trying to reduce their lifestyle because they're in retirement. It's because they believe they had to cut back. Exactly. And showing people they don't have to do that many times. That's awesome. And at the same time, there are some people too, you're going to come in and say, we can't help. That does happen sometimes. Absolutely. But by and large, most people I think would be surprised at what's possible.
It is crazy.
Get educated.
It is crazy what's actually possible. Like,
yes,
it is.
Just with a little education.
Yep. The other day I was going through Simplicitry with even like one of my friends who are my age.
Oh, okay.
And he was like taken away too. And he was like, oh, wow, you know, like this is really cool. And I've never thought about like planning my life out like this. And you could tell like the light bulb went off. And so like this is a helpful exercise for people even as young as me.
Absolutely.
If you're in the middle of your working years, you're almost in retirement, you are in retirement, you need to reevaluate.
All ages, all shapes and sizes.
Exactly. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Well, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
So when your retirement plan depends on market projections, you're gambling with your future. But when it's built on fundamentals and an income strategy and clarity, that puts you in control. So the next time someone tells you to invest for growth, remember the banana.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a better way and a simpler way. And so just we hope for growth, of course, but we plan.
Growth is nice.
Yeah, but we plan for income.
Exactly.
So if this was helpful to you today, please leave comments. Please check the show notes. You can get a link to our calendar if you want to get on and have a free consultation to talk about your particular plan. We'd love to speak with you. And we'll catch you next time on the Legacy Life Podcast. And don't forget, hit the subscribe button. Thank you.